Hi everybody, welcome to The Grow Show. I'm your host, Marijuana Man. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a long time, but we're back again. And today, I'd like to talk about legalizing marijuana. Hey, there's something new for us, eh? But, boy, have you ever heard so much discussion about needing more discussion about discussing legalizing marijuana out there? Everybody's talking about it. Even the most unlikely prohibitionists, too, like Fox News, ex-drug czars, and politicians everywhere. Hell, I expect the Pope to come out and make a statement any day now. But at least they're talking about legalizing marijuana, and that's a good thing. Much, too, is being heard about the failure of prohibition, and that's a good thing, too. But politicians will be politicians, so they come at it from a purely monetary point of view. No need to be compassionate or realize your mistakes. Hell no, there's billions of dollars to be made. We gotta legalize marijuana. Now, for whatever reason anyone would like to legalize pot, I'm all for it. But after the political chest thumping and all the smoke is cleared, we're still going to need to be able to come up with a system to introduce cannabis into a legal marketplace. Now, this is pretty simple for virtually all other commodities, but marijuana has been under the strangling hands of prohibition for some 30 years now. And this has caused two very important things to happen that will have a huge influence over how this will work. First, there's been a tremendous amount of misinformation regarding the dangers of cannabis. And second, there's an enormous and very sophisticated black market currently controlling its production and distribution. These two factors alone make this a very complicated issue now. Because of all the misinformation about cannabis, the politicians now see this similar to alcohol and tobacco, a harmful and sinful substance, if you will. And this fully justifies in their minds the need that there should be an extra tax on it. Now, the bandwagon is overflowing with politicians drooling over the billions they see on the horizon. Not a bad setup. Pretend that marijuana is dangerous and then tax the hell out of it when it suits your pockets to legalize it. Now, as a substance, marijuana falls somewhere between coffee and fake beer in my estimation, but I don't really hear anybody suggesting that it be taxed accordingly. Now, after all these years of horrible prohibition we've been under, even the cannabis culture seems willing to accommodate just about anything and will pay any amount to buy our rights back. Now, here in BC, we already pay around 14% between GST and sales tax on everything. Now, that's 14% of a huge amount of sales that aren't currently being reaped. So for some reason, we need another tax on it? Now, alcohol has a tax about 25% on it. Now, from yearly sales in Canada of about $16 billion, that's roughly $4 billion received in taxes. But on the other hand, the destruction caused by alcohol is estimated to be about $10 billion. So in that case, Canadians are paying about $6 billion a year just to allow alcohol to be sold. Now, according to the Senate report on cannabis, their conclusion was that they could find almost no social cost as a result of its use, very few hospitalizations, and virtually no loss of productivity. So what then would justify this additional tax they're talking about? Given that legalization would additionally save the billions now being spent on enforcement, that's a pretty big amount of money going into the government coffers already. An additional sin tax would be just that, a moral tax based on lies and an idea that we still somehow shouldn't be smoking pot. I'm not so sure that an extra tax is even necessary. Now, naturally, we're going to be asking about what do you think the price of marijuana is going to be in a legal marketplace. Certainly, the current price is set solely by prohibition and depends on which street you live. Now, how that price is arrived upon is quite complicated, since we've had 30 or more years to develop a very sophisticated underground market. Mostly it's determined by what that market will bear based on the perceived risk to provide and a whole lot of myth. Now Jacob Hunter, he did a fairly extensive calculation of the actual cost of producing indoor on a large scale, and he came up with a figure of about $150 a pound, which isn't very much, about $10 an ounce. Now, Health Canada, currently providing medicinal marijuana for users here in Canada, are selling their swag for $2,200 a pound, completely taking advantage of prohibition pricing and profiting horribly from sick people. It's terrible. Now, current talk about legalization in California, they're suggesting a $50 per ounce tax to be levied. Now, nowhere is it being suggested what the retail price would be, just that the government get their $50 on every ounce. And that's probably a pretty good way to go if we're going to have to endure some sort of tax, but it should be a whole lot less than that. So, time will tell.